Ron Anna wanted to introduce the speaker, and we did an arm wrestle, and I won. So I'm really pleased to introduce our speaker, Katie Wisdom Weinstein, Humane Society Education Manager of the Oregon Humane Society. Katie has been working in the field of animal welfare, community programs, and alternative education for over 30 years. She started when she was 5 years old. Her current position at the Oregon Humane Society delivers education and outreach on animal topics and welfare to communities all over Oregon, as well as in over 170 classrooms a year. She enjoys speaking engagements to connect people to the Oregon Humane Society, how to help animals, and the practice of compassion and kindness, whether it be animals, humans, wildlife, or the environment. In addition to education, Katie delivers outreach resources to underserved communities, helping people with basic pet care, medical services for pets, emergency preparedness with pets, and food enrichment. Please help me introduce Katie to our Rotary Club. Oh.
I'll get myself started here. I'm not used to working with a microphone because I usually am in a classroom where I fully can project. So I'll do my best to remember to hold this up. Thank you for that lovely introduction. And also to Lori, who I will add on to your story, Lori. I have an Amos Moses cat. And I thought no one knew who Amos Moses was. And so I'm going to let you all Google that because it's a great song. And Amos Moses was a Cajun. So you can look that one up. But as Phil mentioned, I'm the education manager at Oregon Humane Society. And we've been doing some really amazing, exciting work there lately. Just in the past year, we have increased to include Salem. We took over, merged actually with the Willamette Humane Society. So now we have 2 locations to better serve Oregon. We're constantly trying to find ways that we can reach out further across the state of Oregon. And in some ways, COVID actually helped us do that because so much had to go virtual. And then we were able to serve a lot of people with our education, with our educational presentations, with our training, with any behavior issues. We could then do all of it by phone and Zoom. So we really decided to take that forward with us as we came out of COVID. Well, we're not really coming out of COVID, but we're in a different place with COVID than we were 2 years ago. As Lori mentioned, you know, one thing all of us can usually share is how have animals made an impact in your life? For many of us, it's in our own homes. As I often tell classrooms of kids, you don't have to have an animal at home to care about treating animals humanely, right? And you can even love animals from afar if you don't prefer the fur and the mud and the dirt and the food. So that's one thing to think about now as we get into this mindset of treating everyone more humanely is we're in the business of doing that with animals. So as you can see from the photos, people love to take shots of their animals every year. We have a photo contest. If you want to spend 45 minutes getting everyone's stories, it's not hard because if you ask someone like, do you have a fill in the blank, you might get 45 minutes of a story. And we love that. So the whole time I can always smile and relate when people are talking about their animals. We know it's a very, very special relationship that people have in their lives. So we'll jump in from there. So a little bit of history. OHS was founded by Thomas Lamb Eliot in 1868. Eliot was an incredibly influential clergyman in Oregon who was really, really focused on Portland's civic and social life. So from the greatest hits list here, you can see he helped create the Ladies Relief Society. He was fighting for prohibition because he understood it did relate directly to domestic violence. That's 1867. That's a pretty long time ago to start to have those understandings of what a humane city could look like. He helped establish the Children's Home for Impoverished and Orphaned Children in 1871. He worked with Abigail Scott Duniway for women's suffrage, and he helped organize the Boys and Girls Aid Society. So much he was really involved in. For Oregon Humane Society in particular, the story goes he watched somebody beating a workhorse in the street of downtown Portland and realized big changes needed to happen. And that was going to be through education. So the pillar that I work under at Oregon Humane Society is so fantastic because I get to go out and talk to groups of people, to students, to other organizations about what that can mean to create a more humane society. So that's a little bit of history. The site where we are now on Columbia, we moved there in around 1917. The original building burned down, a new building was built, and now we just keep adding on to that building that we'll talk about in a second. So I'm going to juggle some notes because I don't usually have notes, but we just started talking about our strategic objectives and plans that we just did a lot of work on. So we're 154 or so years old. We have to revisit these plans a lot. Are we meeting the needs of the community? Are we serving who we want to be serving? And so we really see our vision as a world where all animals are treated with compassion, kindness, and respect. So every day we're working on this. The threads of this are in everything that we do. And that sounds really fabulous, doesn't it? It's lofty, but we're like, well, how are we going to do that? So I have to get used to my little slides there. There we go. So the first objectives for us is to making Oregon safe for companion animals. We have an incredible reputation of laws to protect animals, and we have a pretty incredible department, Humane Law, within our building that helps us do that. So they get called all the time. And a lot of what they're going to go out and do is check in on some complaints. You know, if there's a super skinny horse, they're going to knock on the door, and instead of making an assumption that someone's doing something really bad, they're going to be non-judgmental and talk about, do you have the resources you need to care for this animal? Do you need food for the month while you're having a hard time? Do you want to surrender your animal so that we can find a good home for it? Do you want further resources to help you out so you can stay with your animal? So that's a lot of what we do under this pillar, is making Oregon the safest place for animals. Next, there it goes. Protecting animals from cruelty and neglect. Along that same thread, we're working with communities and partners all across Oregon to protect them from abuse and neglect. So again, the Humane Law office that we have has about 5 agents. They're kind of, we nickname them animal cops. And they're going to go out and protect animals through visits. We depend on the community to make those reports, which can be hard, but you may walk by a yard and see a dog every single day that doesn't have a little dog house, doesn't have food and water, and you're going to start to go, what can I do? Well, you call OHS. There's online requests for information, and they will follow up on it. So we are really trying to break that cycle. We also understand in that cycle, the links are that if a person is abusing an animal, they're typically also abusing humans. And we're trying to break that cycle. Just this fall, my next one, we want to make quality veterinary care accessible. Just this fall, we opened up our new community vet hospital. It's extraordinary. I was just talking to Katie, who is also a volunteer at OHS. Thank you. It's extraordinary, it's beautiful, and it's able to serve the community now. Before that, we do have a medical clinic inside the shelter, but it's primarily for the animals at the shelter. Now we have 5 amazing veterinarians, and it's open for the public. So we understand the field of veterinary medicine is in trouble. It doesn't have enough people. And getting into your own vet can be really tricky, difficult, which creates, it's fear, it's scary. I've had an animal that needed to get into a vet, and I couldn't get into my own vet, and I went down to Bridgetown Veterinary Clinic, which is another amazing clinic off Carmen Drive. And this is now going to help Portland. We are partnering with other clinics so that we're not trying to duplicate, we're not trying to steal clients. We're working alongside them to see what can we provide that's different than what you provide. So now the beautiful clinic is down on Columbia. So I've got some brochures on the table if you're looking for a new vet. It's a beautiful spot. So in action, wanted to give you just a few quick stories, and probably at least one of these you've heard of in the news. So we are working in Oregon primarily, but we support all over the country. So when there's natural disasters, when there is man-made disasters, anytime someone is in need of more resources and support to get animals to safety, we can help them with that. So 4,000 beagles in Virginia. It was discovered that in Vigo is a breeding facility, breeding beagles for medical testing. PETA got into this facility secretively, did some filming because they had heard rumors that beagles were being mistreated, and boy, were they. So when they finally made the bust and opened up all of the, all the transparency of what was happening in there became clear, we were called on to help. So in August, 150 beagles flew in a plane, came to Oregon. Lots and lots of organizations were needed to help these 150 beagles out of the 4,000. So we were among a group that took them in. We took 80 beagles, and 20 of those went down to our Salem campus, and they were all adopted within a week. Those beagles had never touched grass. They'd never had human love. They had not been allowed to be dogs. And I don't know if you are walking or hanging out in Portland and you see a beagle that looks about a year old, that's probably one of the beagles. They have play groups now, and they really worked with all of us to make that a safe place for those beagles and shut that facility down. And my guess is more will shut down as a result of the work that PETA did and all the organizations to save those beagles. Another big case happened closer to Salem. And this is where the emergency situation was really utilized for our organization. There all of a sudden out of there were 100 cats that were completely neglected and left. Now, we know there's some mental health issues that might come with some of those cases, and hoarding, for example. And a lot of people think they're doing good, but what really is happening is they're not able to give these animals the care they need. So 100 cats arrived in Salem, and it was loud, it was messy, and they all needed medical care. One of them was Wanda here on the left. You can see she's looking pretty chill there. Both eyes were totally infected and had to be removed. So now we have a blind cat, and we have to get that cat into foster care, which requires volunteer work. And then we have to get that cat adopted into a special home that can manage that kind of animal. It's just going to be a little bit different owning an animal that's completely blind. And there is an animal for everyone, and there's a human for every animal. And at OHS, they can stay as long as they need until we find that right human, the right home to take care of those animals. We are no-kill shelter unless that animal is in pain and there's some medical issues where it would be cruel to keep them alive, as well as there is an occasional case where the behavior is so dangerous, we do not feel that putting them out in the world would be a safe thing for humans. It happens so rarely. So we will keep animals in foster care or even in the shelters until we find the right home. And many humans say, oh, I just had a diabetic cat that just died. I have all the meds. I know how to do it. Give me your diabetic cat. We're like, fantastic. So again, there is a human for every animal and an animal for every human that wants it. So the hospital is brand new that I just was talking about. I was mentioning at the table that since October, 2,500 appointments have been served already. The need was great. Now, what's really beautiful about this hospital is that it's our goal to try to keep humans and their animals and pets together. In the past, if you had an animal that had extraordinary need and you needed a $10,000 surgery and you didn't have the money for it, you had to surrender that pet. And they would get the care, but you don't get to keep them anymore. That's not the case anymore. We're trying to keep animals together with their humans. So not only are we taking full paying clients that need great medical care, we're also taking clients that might need a little subsidized care. So that means if you don't have the means and your animal needs a surgery, we're going to try to work with you to figure out how, what can you pay and then what can be subsidized. So it's a clinic that is very truly based in community and need, which we're very, very proud of. Part of this hospital, upstairs of this hospital, has a state-of-the-art forensics lab. So if we're going to go talk again about humane law, we have a lab that is almost on par with Fish and Wildlife has a lab similar, and we're the only one on the West Coast with that. So actually people are asking to come and use our lab, which we are happy to partner. This is an attempt to make sure that we gather evidence if we need to look at cases of abuse and neglect where we need to prosecute owners. We're hoping that with that additional evidence and forensics lab work, as well as the court system, some people will never be allowed to have a pet ever again because they have been abusing and neglecting them at such a severe level. Some are just said, you can have 2, you cannot have 50. And then we can follow up with that and make sure. So again, we're pretty proud of this amazing clinic. And brochure's there if you're looking for a clinic. So we have close to 100 dogs and close to 100 cats at any given time, sometimes more, sometimes a little less. And Portland is known to be incredibly pet friendly, and we don't have a problem adopting animals here. The flow is constant and we're really good at it. So we actually have a shortage of animals to adopt out. So to get some of those animals, we have about 4% coming through our investigations. Those are animals that have either been surrendered or seized by the Humane Law Department. And after medical care and going through the court system, et cetera, that needs to happen, then they can be adopted out. The next set is about 30% is owner surrender. And we rely on these people. We don't judge people for having to surrender their pets. There's so many reasons why people can't hold on to their pets. Change of life, medical issues, owner passed away, allergies, babies, transportation, money. And we can assure them that when they surrender at OHS, the animals are going to go to a great home. The story is not sad. We do not walk through the shelter in sadness. We walk through the shelter as staff going, you're going to go to a good home, you're going to go to a good home, you're going to go to a good home. So we get pretty excited about it. Lastly, our Second Chance program, which is where we get the most animals to come to Portland, is when other shelters need help, or they can't move their animals, or there's a natural disaster and they have to clear out the existing shelter. Like in Oklahoma, for example, just happened, Hurricane Ida, Hurricane Katrina. We take all the animals that are existing in the shelter out and bring them to Oregon so they can fill their shelter with the animals that are in emergent need. So we are constantly having shuttles arrive, airplanes arrive. There's all kinds of amazing organizations that help support and fly animals around the country so they can find their forever homes. And so Portland, again, is really extraordinary in our ability to adopt out. Our highest year was 11,000, a little over 11,000 animals in a year. 11,000 animals in a year, just Portland Metro. We know people travel a little bit farther if they don't have a humane society or rescue situation in their city, but for the most part, that is Portland Metro. So the cycle never ends. Everyone sort of complains about how big Portland's grown. It's allowed for a lot more animals to get adopted. So we're kind of happy about that part. A piece about a humane society is every single animal gets spayed or neutered before they're adopted. So there's certainly costs with that. They get medical care, they get enrichment, food, medicine, everything they need. And we built a new wing in 2007, we call the AMLC. In AMLC is our own medical clinic. And if you are a veterinary student at Oregon State University, you're going to come to a rotation at our clinic because we are a teaching hospital. And by the time you leave 3 to 4 weeks later, you're going to have done 50 to 60 surgeries. And that makes for great vets. It's a pretty exciting program. The dorms are in the building, so you live in the shelter, which is pretty handy for us to have 24/7 people there. But they're doing the surgeries, and they're also helping underserved communities if you need spay or neuter. We have a very special program that's been going for years called Spay and Save. And a typical spay or neuter at your vet is over $500, well, $300 to $500. At OHS, when you're on the list and you get your animal spayed there or neutered, it's about $25. So we're really trying to also break the cycle of too many animals out in the world. Kind of why we say adopt, don't shop, only because we know there's so many animals that still need a home and we don't feel like we need to breed them to do that. No judgment on those who do. Some other amazing things that OHS does that no one really gets to hear about. If you're hiking in the gorge, dog falls off a trail, you can't go get him, you call OHS. And out comes OSTAR. That is, oh, I always have to look at it. Oregon Humane Society Technical Animal Rescue. They're going to go down, they're all volunteers. They're going to go with their climbing equipment. They're going to climb down there and rescue your dog. This Brutus baby, he went down, he got skinned up. He was scared, but he was fine. And I mean, look at the amount of ropes it took. There was no way, he's a big boy. I think he was 140. He is a big boy. And that owner could not get down there and rescue him. So call OHS when you know there's an animal emergency. They get called for weird things too. Cats in trees. We get called for cats in trees. You know, you used to call the fire department, and if they're not busy, great. But if they're busy, we're going to send some people. I mentioned a little bit. Right here. I was an OMSI kid that liked to push buttons. Deployment. Amazing partnerships with ASPCA, organizations that go down and help when there's disasters. We, again, create and set up temporary shelters in gyms, in schools, in arcade buildings, so that we can rescue those animals. And that happens sometimes once a year or so. We send a crew down, they're highly trained in all those areas. And sometimes they just need drivers. They just need drivers to transport a shuttle of animals from, you know, New Orleans to Utah, where Dumb Friends League, which is a really hilarious name for a rescue, does the same kind of work we do. So we send out lots of teams for that. Humane Education and Outreach, that's my department. So we go into schools, organizations, summer camps, after school clubs, daycares, and talk about why kindness and compassion is important. If we don't teach this, we're not creating a more humane society, because those kids have to understand and put themselves in the place of like, what does compassion and kindness look like? So that number right now, we're at 65 classrooms in the last 6 months, but all told in a year, my team and I, my tiny little team and I, there's 2.5 of us, can go into about 165 classrooms a year. We're presenting on dog safety. We're presenting on healing power of pets, on careers. With pets, we're presenting kindness and compassion in relation to
Laura was telling me about that.
all kinds of subject matter that
do you want me to tell you now, or are you trying to pay attention here?
Have
Laura's going to call me
we
back
want
later in the afternoon.
scouts
I told her
and
to call
school
on the
groups to
other
understand
phone.
what it is we're doing. We do after school clubs, and again, this is all around animal and compassion. We do summer camps all summer, so if you have grandkids, it's going to go live March 1st, and we fill up within 2 weeks.
She's getting some.
The Scouts Badge program is something we're really proud of. When they're earning their PETS badge, they come and do the work with us. So we can give them a volunteer job, and she has the education around it, and they earn their badge, which is pretty exciting.
Kind of go together.
Family events, and lastly, our outreach really includes providing
she was in a
food,
car accident.
education,
Laurel
enrichment,
said,
any kind of services, medical clinics to
somebody
underserved
backed
communities.
into her.
And so we pinpoint that. Our latest one was out at Orange Springs Reservation, and over
car.
300 families showed up needing food.
And
we had it
that's when she noticed her legs
so that
weren't
was
quite
pretty
right. So
amazing. And we want to keep working on that and spreading our wings,
it also turned out
finding
her phone
more
was out
communities that need our
on
resources.
her cell phone, but that's gotten fixed.
Opportunities to support. What can you do? What can I do? We have a foster program. If you have room in your home for an animal, for anywhere from a week to sometimes it's a year.
Well, that's good.
We have that. You can bring an animal in and not say that you really own it. And then we hope you fail at it. We want you to fail at fostering and keep that animal. Right? Foster fails. We love that. Long-term volunteering, we start at 12 years old. We're one of the only programs that does long-term volunteering for 12-year-olds. Katie and I were just talking. 12-year-olds are trained to safely out of the kennel, walk that dog, play with it, enjoy it,
she was in
sit
that
back in the kennel. All that enrichment is needed.
She may be
Adult volunteers, there are ways that you can cruise where you're doing weekly.
Well, whatever it is, but
I know, but she's older. Yeah,
she's done. Or you're just episodic and you say, I just want to be called when you need help with an event. Amazing. So you get to determine how much you want to engage as a volunteer at OHS.
Well, thanks for the report.
We love donating.
Yeah,
we love the members of the community that donate treats and pet supplies and toys. We tell anyone, go on Google, research a recipe, cook 100 dog cookies and deliver them to us. We need it. They're usually all human ingredients, right? Flour, peanut butter, chicken stock, tuna. I've had kids that can't eat them. Like, they didn't believe me. I was like, it's all edible. And they don't take, they're like, these don't taste like.
Okay, well, thanks for.
It doesn't have salt and pepper in it, but you know, we love that.
Yeah,
love it when people want to host a fundraiser for their own community and donate the money for goods. A lot of schools do that for us. And lastly, adopt a pet. That's the biggest way you can do it right off the bat.
Okay, I'll let you know.
That pet commitment, but it's a great way to
the Humane Society
in our communities around animals.
And
that's all I have for you. Thank you so much. And I'd love to answer any questions.
Just like this voice.
No,
Any questions back there? We need you to stand up if you don't mind, so our videographer can find you.
You got me, Bob?
Gotcha.
All right. Tell us what's going on with the Multnomah County's animal services. It looks like it's pretty dire there.
It's pretty dire. I think this is around the second or third time they've been in a really tough situation just within a year, which is pretty indicative of needing to review some of the way they're intaking animals, processing, and of course, staffing. It's not just the vet field that's suffering with animals. It's also anybody in that service industry working with animals. I think we just had a week where they did not take in strays, which is incredibly difficult. It makes it tricky for you as a community member. If you find a stray, people are now like, if I touch that animal and bring it home, that animal is staying with me because they didn't have a way to get somebody to rescue that animal unless it was dangerous. So they are calling on the public first, which you've probably seen. They just had something like 130 applicants to be a volunteer there. That's extraordinary. We have 2,500 volunteers to do what we do. Multnomah County needs more than 130. So hopefully people keep stepping up to the plate and helping them. And that's everything from administering food, medical care, pills, walking, enrichment, paperwork. All that intake takes a lot of people, and just a staff, and it's a small staff, can't do it. So that's one way they're doing it. And then I just talked to our president, Sharon Harmon. She's been there 30 years and she's an extraordinary woman. And she said, yeah, they have to review everything they're doing. And we're here to help. We send over staff and our volunteers to help them, but they need a top to bottom review of their SOPs, how their standard operating procedures and how they're bringing in animals. So we hope that alleviates. So they did start taking strays again. Yesterday or today. So it was a week that was tough. But I think help is coming for them. It's desperate, but we're here to back them up.
Dave's going to stand and have a question.
Hello. You mentioned animal cops and prosecution and forensic labs. You're a nonprofit. Do you also have people that serve in law enforcement roles?
Yeah, this is an interesting twist. So our law agents are certified through Oregon State Troopers. They're not troopers, although two of them happen to be retired troopers, but that's where they get their accreditation and approval to serve. So although we do not have to answer to Oregon State Troopers, they are highly trained in that law enforcement. They're working pretty closely with Portland Police and police agencies around Metro Portland, because often, for example, Portland Police might show up to a call and realize there's a whole part of the call that has to do with animals. Then we're going to partner with them and they're going to call us. So they do not have the ability to arrest a human. They can give citations and gather evidence. They cannot arrest the human. They cannot necessarily, unless the human is getting arrested at the time, they can't just seize the animal right away. There is like a process. First question is, will you willingly surrender this animal? And often the answer is yes. If it's not, then it goes into a court system where we are going to then fight for them to surrender, and then we own the animal. So we do not have the ability to make arrests, but again, totally trained in law enforcement through Oregon State Troopers. Did that answer the question? Yeah. And then we prosecute. We are happy to provide that evidence and go to court, and our law agents are often in court giving testimony.
Looks like in Zoom land, it's either Chris Page or Pam that have their hand up. You'll unmute and don't have to stand up on Zoom, but if you have a question.
No, nobody has their hand up. That's
That's a cursor. Okay, my mistake. Looks like a hand. So, okay, we have Ron over here is going to stand. Are there other animals outside of dogs and cats that you work with?
Thank you, Ron. I always forget something. I forgot that, Ron. We do dogs, cats, small animals, and horses. Horses are rare, and of course, we don't house them on Columbia. We work with other farms that really foster. They're usually sanctuaries that are already set up for that, or a foster system where we just need a place for them to be until they're going to get adopted out. Our small animals are guinea pigs, rabbits, gerbils, hamsters, chinchillas, birds, and mice, rats. No reptiles. We let the expert rescuers do reptiles, fish, other animals that we don't, but small animals, dogs, and cats.
You have a question? You going to stand up first?
Yeah, thank you, Katie. Great, very informative. I'm wondering, you see a lot of homeless people with animals, mostly dogs, and I'm wondering, do you have a program, or do you get involved with this, or you wonder if they're, taking good care of the animal, and so I guess just driving around the city, it's kind of scary, really, for the animals. So do you have a program that deals with that?
We incorporate a lot of our resources with outreach to the homeless and houseless communities. We know that those are companion pets for those people, and for the most part, they are treated often better than how they're treating themselves, which is really important. There's sort of a primal thing too, dogs like to wander and travel, and they are on foot a lot. So we know that sometimes those animals are being well taken care of. We have food banks, and we give away free food and services on occasion. When we know there's someone that's come in the door that needs help, we find a way to get them help. We haven't done any deployment where we literally go out to like an encampment and offer something, and that might be a step that we decide to take in outreach. It's kind of new for us. But we see it all the time. And a lot of people will walk in the door and say, I'm in an emergency situation. And we will say, we're here to help. We'll figure it out. It might be a partnership between Dove Lewis, ourselves. We work with other PAWS. PAWS is an organization in town that gives a lot of food and resources to houseless animals. So yeah, there is a bit of that too. If also Good Samaritans in the neighborhood also often leave food and etc. to be donated to those humans for their pets. We get in thousands and thousands and thousands of pounds of food a year to be able to disseminate. And sometimes it's through organizations and sometimes it's through someone walking in the door. So we do have some of that. It's hard to see. We just recently saw a very sad case on 33rd. If you've ever driven between, 33rd and Marine Drive, people drive so fast on there. It's a highway. We've seen animals get hit, and it's devastating. And it's devastating for the humans. So we don't judge. We just hope that the houseless and homeless people who have animals know how to find us, and then we can try to find them too.
Just quick little comment on my part. I'm glad your 80 Beagles did not fly Southwest.
Or yesterday when everything shut down, right? So
Thank you very much. I'll turn it back over.
thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Katie. There's amazing work done at the Oregon Humane Society. I thank you. My dog, Charlie, the Jack Russell rescue dog, thanks you too.